Hey there, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here, Simply Worldbuilding. Today we're going to talk a little bit about building characters and how to make them fun, dynamic, interesting, and something that you can actually enjoy playing long form.
I think that's impossible.
Speak for yourself, buddy.
No, it isn't. Here's how to do it. Yeah, so I think we mentioned a little bit about like what we're going to talk about now in the previous episode.
Yeah.
Because as we had mentioned in the episode about like how to make a first session is if you're a DM, you hopefully want to check on what your characters what characters have been made for your campaign in order to try and intertwine them into the plot. So there's going to be a little bit of similarity between there and here.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, a lot of starting a campaign on session 1 has to do with characters.
No way. No.
And taverns, but I guess I'll have to watch the other video.
But yeah, totally right there. When you start making a character, start with their name. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Seriously, don't do that. You're going to be stuck there for 8 hours. At least for more experienced players, what I find is easy is to come up with some sort of like fun little concept, or something that makes them different than the standard. But for a new player, I think that's still valid, and that's something you should still kind of strive to do, but it's more difficult to do when you don't actually understand the mechanics of anything quite yet, or don't have the experience, and so that's okay. For new players,
you wind up with a lot of, I want to be the rogue that steals things. I want to be the druid that speaks to animals. I want to be the lone wolf, Batman, Ranger type, you know? Like, you get a lot of the sort of
stereotypes.
Like the stereotypes, the core identities of like a class or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But the challenge there becomes now, what do you do to make that exciting, interesting, unique, and something that you're going to really enjoy playing once you're a little bit more familiar with the game and not just going for this one thing.
Because it is kind of a decent exercise in order to try and play out one of those stereotypes, because they're kind of there for a reason. But the key aspect of what you had just said is your enjoyment of it. Because it might work for the purposes of stretching your legs in the D&D space a little bit, but what is it actually going to do for you being fascinated in the plot and development of your own character? It's going to do very little. And so trying to find something that will make them a little bit more interesting is still something to do. Now, the scale of which is the difference, I think, between an inexperienced and an experienced player. Things that you might be able to do that can kind of do this for an inexperienced player is, and you can even find this in the player's handbook when it comes down to, or on like D&D Beyond, for example, for the sort of flaws and what are the other ones called?
Traits.
Yeah, just like traits and stuff like that. Minor things like this can help to make your character feel a little bit more unique from just any other one. And those are definitely a good start. I find that they're sometimes a hindrance just in the way that they've been phrased in like the core stuff. So
the last thing that you want to do is wind up... When I said the lone wolf Batman type, that was a joke, because when you make a character and you give them flaws and stuff like that, it's really good that you can stick to them, but a common trap that a lot of people fall into is for like, especially for new players, almost exclusively for new players at least, is you end up with the edgy rogue that never stops stealing from the party, wants to kill everybody, the paladin that takes their oath very, very seriously and threatens to kill the party, and that type of thing. And you have the right ideas that you've got like a character with an identity that you're slipping into, and you have flaws. You're not, this perfect thing, but it's too much. You need more layers than just the flaws. And that one idea of your character.
Yeah, definitely. And so, let's see if I can think of an example of something that wouldn't just be like merely a flaw, but well, I guess the easiest places to start would be with, one of my own characters. The character I have in your campaign, he is a human. I know. Don't burn me at the stake. I don't know why. I just can't fucking make a non-human character. I'm probably the most boring person.
I've got a rant I might slip into later.
Yeah, fair enough. But he's a human fiend warlock. I took the idea and inspiration of the deal with the devil and made that kind of a primary thing, but that I feel is almost a stereotype in itself. Now, what sort of character trait that kind of made him, what was kind of part of his base identity, is the fact that he hates liars. This became a very, very core part of his identity because I try not to... Being someone who has to make a contract for your soul as often as possible, trying not to lie to them is a fucking challenge.
Yeah, but you wind up with all of these moments where you are really having to pull, like, your inner salesman out and do these, like, I won't lie, but I'll tell half truths, and I'll tell, like, around the lie and that sort of thing.
And you'll omit things. Yeah. And exactly.
But it makes you play your character in a very specific and different way that makes them unique, interesting, and gets you into their shoes.
And so this was the thing, is just that sort of... It's not exactly a character flaw. It's not exactly a character goal. It's something that was actually baked into the backstory of that character. It was based on a very traumatic event in their past.
Classic.
And... yeah, you can't have a D&D character without trauma.
Yeah. You get their name first, and then their whatever horrific thing happened in their past.
Name, trauma, and then you gotta go with their alignment. No.
Yeah.
No, but so outside of just like trying to pick all the things on the list of making a character, maybe having some sort of small concept like that to insert is something that will sort of help. Like, he hates liars. So what that means is that when someone does lie, keep in mind this is a lawful evil character. So obviously that'll create a target automatically for him. And then it is a lot of work for me to try and not lie to anyone. As someone who is actually probably better based in stats to try and do deception, trying to not do deception. Now that's difficult, but we've played D&D enough where this is not the most difficult thing for us. So that's okay. But a minor trait like that to throw in can make things a lot better. That's for sure.
So one other thing.
Continue.
One other thing that I kind of do, and I'm wondering if you do the same thing, is when I've sort of come up with like a core identity of what my next character is going to be, I kind of picture like a phrase or a situation that they're involved in.
Yes.
You have this picture of like how this whole thing goes down and how they're reacting, and then it's like kind of this cool moment or this sad moment or this whatever moment that kind of always sticks around, and it helps you sort of build out their personality from that. And then also in the case of like accents and stuff like that, I find that often that's kind of a phrase that I can kind of say in my head a few times to like remember what they sound like, or remember like their personality a little bit, is just kind of running through that scene or that, sentence or whatever it may be. And so I've got a couple up there in my head for different characters I've got, and if I'm like, maybe I haven't played them in a while, I'm like, I want to pick this character back up off the shelf, so I run through that situation, I kind of say some of their lines in that accent, I'm like, there it is. I'm back in it.
Yeah, here we are back again. No, that's probably the most helpful thing I find for making and continuing characters as well. Continuing being one of the key parts.
Yeah.
I think I had mentioned in the last episode when talking to your DM, or at least how I do this is I'll ask my characters, hey, are there any of these moments that you want to sort of happen or play out? Because it's totally okay to have something that you want to happen because you feel it's integral to the expansion of that character. Now, it might change or it might be different as it actually gets there and happens, because things change. But trying to think of these moments and having them not only to expand the character, but also as an anchor, I feel like that's what helps in the continuation of the character as well. Whenever I'm coming up with a character, I have one or multiple scenes, like just little scenes. Like you say, they can be anything, but they so help with getting into character, making character,
Yeah.
and maintaining character when you're kind of when you find yourself falling back into yourself. You can kind of just play this out in your mind and be like,
Yeah.
okay, this is how we go into the
'Cause
future.
That is sort of, if you do this before you actually build the character, like stats and everything, then it can help you really sort of like find what their actual identity is, and then you can base things like stats and story and stuff off of that, and then you can kind of just like keep that in mind and say, well, what would the person in that scene do? And that's where you go from there. If you're ever at a point where you're like, yeah, slipping out a character or something like that, and you can picture that scene or that interaction or something like that, and just think about, well, that's the character that I built, that I based this entire thing off of. What would that one do? And then, at least in the early game, like later on, you'll
Characters
pick up
develop.
you'll pick up other things that now become hopefully kind of your new scene to think about.
Sometimes you'll play something out, and that you're like, that was such a strong character moment. I love that, even if it changes the character fundamentally.
Yeah.
That's your new moment.
That's what characters do, baby. That's what they should do. Change and grow.
So yeah, these scenes are probably my favorite part of coming up with a character, because it's so rewarding to just think of them. Like, I'm not even sure if I should say the one for Murdoch, because yet again, he is a lawful evil character who is generally not a fun dude. This isn't the moment, but just to put in perspective how much of a piece of shit this character is he literally sold a child's soul to a dude for some sort of favor in the future. Like, he's not a good dude. Maybe we'll do maybe we'll do some sort of episode on how to play the alignment of your characters in the future.
This dude, it was either 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after he conned this child out of his soul, his everlasting soul, that he really kicked the can around thinking about doing it to also an old lady trying to sell seeds. He didn't, but he went for the kid.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was for
a great session.
Thank you.
like, I gave this kid like a 50 gold diamond for his soul. Anyway, so
Teach the kids in your world what their soul is worth.
Didn't you steal the diamond too?
I don't think so. I
no,
think he genuinely
I had
did
to pay for it.
Yeah.
I would have stolen it.
Yeah.
Sure. But either way, the moment, very early, the moment that I had thought of, and again, the core of this guy is he doesn't like liars. It was like a scene out of like a freaking murder mystery thing. Just like some guy tied to a chair who had basically lied in a not like a soul contract, but with like a with a normal contract, just lied to my character Murdoch, and so Murdoch captured him, tied him up, and began to torture the man, and said, "You know, I don't like liars, mate," and just proceeded to make this man have a bad time. Now, how that had helped me moving forward was kind of made me put in perspective what kind of lies it would kind of make this character's blood boil. Like, if someone told like a little white lie about something, like I wasn't gonna frickin' tie them up and torture them about it.
My dad works in Nintendo.
Yeah.
You better be prepared to die for that.
Yeah. No, exactly. But what it had done is sort of put into the perspective is, no, it was more breaking a promise, or that sort of thing. Very powerful lies that he had disliked. And so it helped me make this evil character not the rogue who constantly steals things from the party and says, well, what, I'm just doing my character.
Just playing my character, yeah.
It was something that put in perspective what would actually make this character angry. And I feel like it helped me play an evil character without going over the top. And so that was kind of the scene I had used for my character that I play in your campaign, for better or for worse.
Yeah. You know, like, as dark and evil and grim as it sounds, he actually has a blast to play with. And he recently cried, and all it took was killing another character.
All it took was the death of his only friend.
Yeah.
Well, that also wasn't you that killed him, though. He just died in the story.
It was actually like...
I died in the
yes.
story.
Yeah.
It
That
was...
planned.
Yeah.
So...
It was baked into the character. It was essentially a goal of this character, who was an old man, to have a peaceful rest. But you make good enough characters and you form good enough bonds, and that kind of stuff...
That sticks with you.
That's what the game's all about, baby.
But yeah, so just to give a little bit of reference on like, okay, this is a little scene I had made in my mind about this character, and it helped me in several ways to kind of anchor back to this character in a realistic way. I mean, I feel like with your character, the old man, I feel like him dying was kind of something that like you had gone in basically expecting.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of a goal. I made him as an incredibly old man gnome.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was almost like a little scene for you, is like, how is this going to affect the world and players around me? It's just a little scene that helped an old man paladin who, you know, kind of always had the best, everyone's best interests at heart. Like, the effect he had on the people who knew him when he died was sort of catastrophic. It's just, again, like this little scene that you can think of in your head in the conception of the character that helps you tie the character down, understand their goals, understand and what they might do in any given situation. I love these scenes. They're my favorite part.
So I'll actually talk a little bit about one that I have crafted up recently.
Sorry, can I just add something real quick?
Yeah.
For anyone who might be wondering, my character died peacefully in his sleep and was found in his bed.
Yeah, it was incredibly tragic.
Yes.
But it was also nice. It was sweet. That's what he wanted.
It was a bittersweet moment, and it was one of those few moments where you actually get emotional when playing D&D.
This dude, though, we're on a rant now. This dude made him sign one of those soul contracts for his soul.
Yeah, that was the tragic part. It was so bittersweet. We had mentioned in the last episode that when we started your campaign, my character Murdoch and your character Arlen had known each other, and how they had known each other was basically that my character did what he does and made a character made his character sign a contract, giving his soul to me, which was to my the fiendish patron. So basically, I had damned him to hell, unknowingly. I didn't tell him, so I didn't lie about it.
Yes,
but
the contract was for an afterlife. He wanted to secure an afterlife, and he gave him an afterlife.
I can give you one of those.
Rotting in hell is a lemure.
Yeah, and so by this time we had actually grown very close as characters, and so my character was even like, maybe I can get him out of this contract somehow. Like, that was something in his mind, and he died naturally, and it was such a sad moment because it was just this moment where my character kind of regretted his actions for the first time ever. So we're expounding a lot on specific character developments and stuff like that. But
they're good examples.
Yeah. I'll also go through a couple, like, two sort of diametrically opposed almost, of those sort of like scenes kind of that you get in your head. I have one character that I do actively play who I wanted not any tragic backstory, you know?
That was kind of the goal almost when you're kind of going in. You're like, I'm going to make a D&D character whose parents are alive.
Yes, they're alive and I actually have pretty good, reasonably healthy relationships with. There's et cetera,
Tried to do the impossible.
But like, yeah, and their whole thing was that they, you know, are the second son of the second family to the second, like, whatever. So they're like, I'm going to leave my small place and go out and adventure. And their motivation is to adventure. It's not, you know, led by trauma or anything like that. They just want to have these moments and create their own thing where they're not the second of the second of the second. And they have a bucket list that I started with a handful of things on that they want to get done. And so those are motivations. And then as we go, I fill in other things and sort of their motivations keep going. But the plan is just to adventure and live a life that I can settle down and be important to some people and tell these good stories. And then my new character that I'm crafting that neither of these two know particularly a lot about, so no spoilers. But it's a paladin and Echo Knight multi-class, and they were, because more than likely if this character comes in, they're probably going to be replacing one of my higher level characters, so I'm expecting them to be a little bit higher level, so that's why they're multi-classed already. But they started out as like this paladin who served a god that he thought was the god of like justice and etc., a good god, who ended up being the literal god of like liars and cheaters and whatever, and so he was like, you know, scammed out of everything that he thought was right.
The rug was pulled out from under him, yeah.
When he found that out, he basically took a step back and was like, sorry, also started a family at this point.
Yeah.
Because when this god saw that, oh, he's taking a step back, like to go and, you know, sort of be with his family and not fulfill his obligations to me, his deity, saw that as like splitting attention. And so as retribution, he split him into like sort of two halves, and therefore the Echo Knight. But then also, because he's just a rotten little bastard, also sent somebody essentially to burn down the house with the young children and the wife inside.
Child endangerment
And trauma. Two good things about... Yeah, so anyway, I made one character who is just wholesome, and then one character who does have this dark trauma, but also has good things that come of it, because they have a great love for family and friends and stuff like that. But then also this like hatred of people sort of taking away other people's like freedom of choice and stuff like that. And they will not only like do their absolute best to dismantle and stop any person out there who is, you know, taking away people's choices and freedoms and stuff like that, but then also will protect at all costs their family. And probably also you can toss in the flaws that maybe he has a fear of fire and stuff like that. Like, you come up with a scene, and then those powerful feelings that you get from this scene will continue to inform how your character acts and plays and how you act as them throughout the rest of the game, until eventually they grow. Maybe one day, I don't know if I'll stick with the afraid of fire thing, but maybe one day he overcomes that because of etc., etc. And even though you have this core identity that formed them at the beginning, they'll grow beyond that, and then you'll have a new scene sort of in your head, and that'll be the new one that you go off of.
That actually brings up such a good point too, because that's like a scene. That scene is like almost like a whole backstory.
Totally.
But like, yeah, I think the quintessential scene is sort of the moment.
I will say, sorry, in my head, technically the scene specifically
Yeah.
is kind of like the moment where like he goes home and finds his family. So that is a little bit more of the backstory. But that's the idea.
Yeah, that's that sort of like few minutes that you sort of scene you can picture in your head. But you bringing up the backstory makes me think as well, if you do come up with these scenes, they don't actually have to be in the past. In the case of the one I have for my character Murdoch, I always pictured it being something that happens within the campaign in the future. So don't let time restrict you. Jesus, I almost said constrict. Don't let time restrict you on what sort of moments you picture you having with this character. These little scenes that help you anchor yourself and help you expand can be something you expect in the future, and something that can have happened in the past.
They're just an idea of what you want for that character, right?
Yes, exactly. And so again, don't let that restrict you. Now, also, you bringing up backstory is, I think, an important starting point, because I think when it comes down to the player's handbook, it'll try and get you to pick your class and what is now called species instead of race, I think. They'll try and get you to do your class and species first. I'm not sure that's the best way to start.
There's obviously times where you know you want to play a wizard, but starting from class and species kind of limits you a lot in the grand scheme of things if you don't come up with your identity for the character first.
Yeah, I feel like doing class and backstory kind of at the same time. Like I would say I call it backstory first, but the class can kind of inform the backstory a little bit. So yeah, you're like, okay, I have an idea for a wizard, and he's a necromancer type of wizard. So you're like, I want to make a caster. Okay, what do I do with that necromancer sort of thing? Okay, so you kind of are starting with the class a little bit, but you're more using it to inform the backstory. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what sort of thing turned him into a necromancer? What sort of life did he live before that made him choose these sorts of things? These are the questions you want to start asking yourself about the character. And I think that's kind of the easiest way to think about it, is instead of just trying to merely think about it, ask yourself questions about the character as if you're curious asking someone else something. So like this necromancer character, you could say like, okay, well, what did they do before? Maybe there were a mortuary, they ran a mortuary or something like that.
Yeah, there was just below a bakery. Intrigue.
Yeah. And they had maybe someone that they had loved had died, and so they kind of had access to the body and wanted to bring them back. And that was maybe the first instance of them actually doing the necromancy, like something necromantic in the first place. And that was sort of how this character started. And so you can ask yourself, okay, like what happened from there? Did they feel guilty about bringing this person back selfishly? Did they get attacked by it? Did they have control over it and they felt powerful because of it? Like, there's a lot of things you can ask yourself once you start laying down this sort of foundation that will inform what the character is going to evolve into.
Yeah, how did they feel when they found out that their new loved one was just like basically a mindless undead? Mm-hmm. What did they do with them afterwards, and why are they not traveling with them? Mm-hmm. Are they traveling with them? Mm-hmm. You know, there's all kinds of stuff, because maybe they are still traveling with them and they keep them in a small little...
They're a shrunken head.
Yeah, there we go. I was just about to accidentally come up with the main plot of Demon Slayer, basically.
But like, yeah, so when you're trying to when your very first moments of in the very first moments of starting to create your character, trying to kind of ask questions rather than just throw stuff at the wall, I find helps me quite a bit. Because you think, I want to play a caster. Then you ask, what sort of caster? Okay, that informs the necromancer half. Okay, why are they a necromancer? And these questions tend to just beg other questions. Mm-hmm. And so the entire process will begin from there. But I find coming up with the backstory tends to inform the most. I found it's very helpful, especially when you get to the areas of proficiencies.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just see, oh, this warlocks have these many proficiencies, and okay, I can definitely see this one, but the rest of these don't quite fit.
Why are they proficient in leather workers' tools?
Mm-hmm.
Ew, as a necromancer? There's something there.
There's something there. That is, again, the why question that leads you to places. But when it comes down to just like this big list of stuff, why are they proficient in this? Maybe, yeah, like I said, maybe one of them is very clear to you, but the rest of them aren't. But you have to pick some, and so trying to ask these questions, if you're stumped, can help you come to these conclusions when they might not be so obvious otherwise.
Yeah. Like, why are they always a human? Let me tell you, I'm ready for that rant now.
Yeah.
I don't like, and I don't know if in the new D&D thing that they've changed it now that it's species, I don't know if they've changed it and made it better. I don't like the way that they did their like proficiencies with like the way that you get your extra like stat bonuses.
Yeah.
Don't like it. Because if you are playing as a bard, you basically have like two options. Mm-hmm. You're gonna go as, a dragonborn or a tiefling, or a human, because certain classes work by far the best with certain races, and it is very, very limiting to not be able to choose the other ones if they don't match your idea of what the character is. However, humans are extremely versatile is the word I'm looking for. They're extremely versatile, and they get, their +2 to 1 and +1 to 1 or +1 to everything if it's the variant or whatever. And so they kind of just work for every character. And if you don't want to be a dwarf when you make a fighter, then it's a human. If you don't want to be a tiefling when it's a bard, then it's a human. So I don't like the way that they've done that because it feels pretty limiting. Whereas, when you're in character building, you're supposed to leave all of your options open and follow your heart and see what the character says to you. But it spoke to you, and now you have to change your whole identity because you have to play as a dwarf. You didn't want to.
I kind of see what you mean, because you can always say like, well, the stats aren't everything, but
they're not.
The stats make you feel like you're making the wrong choice.
It feels like you're being punished for following the path that you wanted to follow. Because now either you can't play the character the way that you had envisioned them, or you're gonna take a penalty to their scores and their attributes. And when you start consistently rolling lower than you would otherwise, then that can kind of sometimes take you out of your character because you're not succeeding at the things you thought you would be succeeding at. So that's my beef. I don't really like that. I personally wish that we could all get on board with just calling it what it is, and you get to do a +1 here and a +2 there.
I don't remember exactly how they changed it. I think it's better, but I do see what you mean.
Yeah, because I'm gonna keep ranting for a second here. You've already got those secondary perks, dwarves get their resistance to poison and all this stuff and that stuff, whatever it may be. Those are enough reason for you to choose them if you had a specific reason you wanted to go for that one. But otherwise, it lets you just follow your heart, what the character says to you. If you make it more versatile. You can disagree with me in the comments. That's okay. This might be a hot take. That's the way I calls them as I sees them.
Rant over, I think.
I'm good. I got it out of my system.
No, I mean, I agree.
Just because I always end up making human characters. I'm good.
Do you? I thought it was my problem.
Almost all my characters are human, except for the one that I made a fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
That was a time. That was definitely a time. I don't know. I find I constantly make my characters human, although I think it's more just because I always end up picturing them like that, and then the moment I come up to the question of what species they're supposed to be, I'm like, well, I've already thought of all these scenes while they're human.
And now imagine them as being a gnome, because that's the only way that you get the stats that you need.
Well, exactly, and so it really throws a wrench into the creative process, even though it's the least creative fucking species you can pick out of all of them.
That's funny, because I basically can't make a human.
I find that's probably the default stance of most D&D players. Hopefully. Is they're like, I'm a goddamn human in real life. Why the fuck would I want to be one in fantasy? That makes the most sense, and that's actually how I felt when I started playing the game. I made a Dragonborn because it was one of the weirdest ones you could be in the base book. But just my characters tend to be human. Anyway, that's more of a personal gripe. Back to sort of what we were saying with using your class to inform your backstory a little bit, and your backstory to inform your class a little bit. And you can also do that, again, specifically with species. One of the reasons a lot of my characters I find I always picture them as human, is they always kind of, most of the time I picture them in sort of their climate is sort of a human city. Like the character Murdoch I was mentioning, he's a sort of deal maker, and he thrives in populated areas, and so I always pictured him in a very sort of English streets. He's dressed like a very dapper gentleman. And so I picture him in those sort of circumstances. The Necromancer character is a character that I've actually kind of lately already made. Very, very similar to my other character in the fact that he's human. And I just, again, picture him in these sort of English or Britain sort of populated older cities and stuff like that. And so there he sits again, another human. Because it's weird to picture for me a dragonborn with a top hat wandering through the streets of London. Like, that's just kind of how it happens for me. I do have a character that I've made that isn't a human. They're an elf, the next closest thing.
That's
Give him a pass. Just do it.
fair enough.
But actually, they're a half elf, which isn't a thing anymore. But fuck you, I'll do what I want. But that is informed by their backstory, because they are the firstborn but bastard son of a royal family. And so all of his sort of birthrights that should have been given to him have been revoked. And because he's a half-elf, and so he's like not even shown to the public. Like, the public doesn't even know he exists because of this sort of backstory. And that's an instance of the backstory, again, informing the more stat-based and fundamental areas of the character. So I think this is why it's important to kind of work at all these things evenly instead of one and then the other and then the other. I find a lot to do with your backstory will be kind of the fun part of the making of your character. And so using that to inform the decisions you make further is very important. Like, again, proficiencies, it's this huge list, but you can maybe pull from certain things that you've thought of, like, I guess he would be kind of proficient in religion because of this.
Yeah, the amount of times I've given myself proficiencies because I had pictured this being in their backstory and then never actually used it, because it's not relevant if you can work leather regular.
But you were able to make that decision at the very least instead of just picking one at random.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I feel like that's so unsatisfying when you have this proficiency or something like that just sitting in the background and you're like, not only is it not helpful, but I didn't even want it in the first place.
Yeah.
So trying your best to inform your backstory can help you make those decisions when they're big decisions. One thing I find, because I play warlocks way too much. Warlocks are my favorite class. Fight me about it. One of the biggest problems that I find is how many Eldritch invocations there are. It's a massive list, and just the base list is massive, let alone if you get the Tashas, and extra, and it's just massive. It is so much.
Yeah.
And that's just another example of this gigantic list that is so intimidating. How the hell am I going to work with this? Taking your backstory and trying to think, okay, you know, maybe this one's like, I consider this one to be super overpowered, but I think this would probably work better for the character.
Yeah, because again, you're going to have these images in your head of what they are, how they act, what they can do, and probably a general idea of like what you want them to feel like in combat or in roleplay or something like that. And so then you can make those informed decisions later on instead of seeing that brick wall of text and going, that one's strong, or that one, I guess, or whatever, right?
Yeah, an example of how that helped me very, very quickly with my this character we've been mentioning, Murdoch. He is, like I said, he's a contract maker, he's a con man, he's a charlatan, he's a salesman.
He's a man.
But one of the things that popped into my head immediately when I was looking through the Eldritch Invocations to try and think of like, what the hell am I going to give this character? Because I wanted him to be very observant so that stuff couldn't get past him easily. I gave him the one that gives you detect magic immediately, because in the instance where, you know, he's one-on-one with another salesman or another person who's very much like him and trying to pull a fast one, it's like, oh, hello, sir, behold this magic item. The tale is old as time, someone trying to sell you something that it's not. He can detect magic and be like, you're full of shit. And that just immediately popped into my head based on the character backstory and what had sort of built up to be the character's flavor. The next one that I had chosen was the one that allows him to see in the dark as a human, which again was so basically like you couldn't pull a fast one on him in the dark. And so I layered all of these Eldritch invocations on top of the idea that it's very hard to you can't con a con man sort of idea.
Tell him the third one.
The third one?
Tell him the third one.
The one that lets me see through walls?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that one's fun. I've layered all of my Eldritch Invocations on the idea that my character basically has the most valuable eyes known to man. Yeah. But again, it was all based on his backstory and his sort of current story of being a charlatan and a swindler, and the hope that you can't con a con man. They'll see right through you. That's the idea, and it was all based on trying to drum up the character's backstory before diving into the stats and stuff like that. So that's just another example of how that's been helpful for us.
It's fine. It's cool. It's cool. It's good. It's a full character. I'm just being dramatic because I like to pull shisty little maneuvers. So what?
And I made a character specifically built for making sure you can't fucking do that. Yeah, he's also got like a 19 passive perception, which isn't the craziest you've seen, but it's definitely not a small number either.
It's up there.
I love making characters, man. It's fun.
Totally, it's a blast. Yeah, making characters is like, I mean, maybe not the most fun part of the game, but yet even when we've got a game going on, I can't help but be making characters at the same time.
Yeah,
so.
No, exactly. Yeah. So hopefully this has been at least somewhat helpful. We didn't really dive too far into the idea of like how to choose a subclass and stuff like that. But
well, because in my opinion, like, you got an idea of what you want the character to be able to do, but the important part is to make the character enjoyable to play and have a story that you can live off of that paper. Mm-hmm. So,
well, this is the thing: is the stats that you develop are on paper, but the character lives in your mind. And so this is why, again, when it like comes down to it, I think the backstory and the flavor you want to put forward for this character is so much more important than the stats. It's fun to min-max and make something ridiculous, for sure. But I feel like it's more fun to play something
that feels like how you wanted it to feel.
Yeah, exactly. I feel it's so much more rewarding to have a character that's a character that you created and has evolved beyond what you thought it would be as well, rather than merely stats on paper.
Yeah, a full-fleshed, actual, engaging, and exciting and interesting character. Yeah,
indeed. So hopefully this will drum up at least a little bit of inspiration on what you might be able to do with your characters moving forward outside of their stats and stuff like that. And if you have any cool character concepts that are outside of the box, or any particularly broken builds,
definitely
that can like see through walls for.
It's always fun to hear what people get up to when they start like really getting into the nitty-gritties of all these feats and stuff like that, and how the combos work. But also, if you just got a character that you're proud about, drop that down below in the comments as well, because we love to hear what people come up with. Yeah,
accidentally came up with a broken perception character purely based on the flavor and not the fact that I wanted to bother my DM. But I got the fun of bothering the shit out of my DM, so that's also a bonus. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya. Hey there! Welcome to the end card. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to drop a like and subscribe, and feel free to also check us out on Instagram and Spotify. But today, we have for you a challenge time. Probably, conceptually, the simplest one yet.
Oh, yeah.
We want you to just make a character. Or if you have a character already, drop your most interesting or outside the box character into the comments, because again, like I said, character creation is one of my most favorite parts of the whole thing, and I love with with at least the people I play with, helping them come up with their characters as well. So more content in the comments is more fuel for the fire, for my inspiration and weird ways to make things strange for everybody else. So
yeah, looking forward to reading them.
But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
See ya.